I'd like to call to order the April 26th Board of Zoning Appeals meeting, and the first item of order is to the consideration of the minutes for the regular meeting on March the 22nd of 2017. Are there any changes or amendments to those minutes? Seeing none, we will accept them as submitted. Our first item under our agenda under old business is application Z17013 by Fred Halpert, representing First United Methodist Church. They are requesting a special use permit for the following. Number one, construction of a columbarium to house 250 niches for cremated remains within a brick enclosure measuring 7 feet tall, 26 feet long by 3 feet deep, and construction of a soccer field. Those are unrelated items. The property is located in a residential single-family RS zoning district at 265 West Thompson Lane. Ms. Rush, would you review that application for us, please?
Yes, we have one board member here today that is a church member that would recuse herself. And this item was continued to today's hearing because we didn't have a quorum last month for that same reason. So.
Yes, and I'm a member at First United Methodist Murfreesboro, and as such, it would not be appropriate for me to vote on this matter.
Thank you. So at last month's meeting, the public hearing was opened and closed, so we do not need to take any public comments in today's meeting. Just to give a brief overview for anyone who was not here, the applicant, as you said, is the First United Methodist Church, and they are requesting a special use permit for two items. One is for the columbarium that would be constructed. It would hold 250 niches for deceased cremated remains. And then the second is the construction of an athletic field adjacent to the property. If you refer to, if we could have the photo shown. Let's see. I'm on the wrong item. So the site plan does show the location of the columbarium would be at the front of the church, which faces Thompson Lane, and then the athletic field on the open grass field next to it. So Section 2 of the Murfreesboro zoning ordinance does allow these uses in the RS-15 district, and the applicant was here in case you have any questions. Otherwise, there is no public hearing. Thank you.
Since there is no public hearing, do we have any questions or comments for the staff regarding this application? Seeing none, do we have a motion one way or the other?
If no further questions, I'll make a motion to approve on the first one that we're voting on.
The columbarium, you okay?
Yes.
All right.
I'll second that, Mr. Chairman.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? The columbarium passes, and we'll take a, so was the construction of the soccer field part of the prior one application also that was not heard?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So what say we with respects to the construction of the soccer field?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move that we approve the request for construction of the soccer field as well.
And I'll second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? That also passes. So our next item of business under old business is application Z16059 by William Kennedy. It is a rehearing of a request for a special use permit to establish a group daycare home for no more than 12 children in accordance with the City of Murfreesboro zoning ordinance Chart 1. Property is in a single-family residential RS-10 zoning district located at 1411 Marymont Drive. Ms. Rush, will you review that application for us, please?
Thank you very much. As noted, yes, this is a rehearing for a special use permit request to operate a group daycare home for up to 12 children located at 1411 Marymont Drive, which is zoned single-family residential 15. This item was considered and denied by the Board of Zoning Appeals back on September 28, 2016. The applicant, Mr. William Kennedy, filed a petition for writ with the Chancery Court, and then the city and the applicant had agreed to a rehearing of the project request and consideration of the facts. The previous minutes from the September 2016 Board of Zoning hearing and those application materials were included in your staff packets for your reference and consideration. For this hearing, it would require another vote, either in favor or not in favor of the request. So the applicant wishes to operate a group daycare home for up to 12 children for preschool. He would operate this in the garage of the residence at this location. The hours would be from 7 o'clock in the morning till 5 o'clock p.m. The applicant states that his daughter resides at this residence, and there would be another part-time person who would help as an employee to manage this particular use. The applicant would need to construct 2 new parking spaces on the property and also install a driveway that would allow for drop-off and pickup of the children without backing into the street. The applicant has proposed a circular driveway to accommodate this particular requirement. He also indicated that he wants to construct cabinets, counter, sink, and refrigerator, microwave, which would require building permits for this conversion from a garage to that type of a use. The Murfreesboro zoning ordinance does allow a daycare home in the RS-15 zone if a special use permit is approved, and that the minimum standards for special use permits, specifically for home daycares, are that the use will not substantially adversely affect the adjacent property or character of the neighborhood, or traffic conditions, parking, or general public health, safety, and welfare. That the use will be operated in a manner that would be compatible with the immediate vicinity and not interfere with the use of the adjacent property in accordance with the city regulations, and that the use will be served with water, sewer, parking, drainage, and other city standards would be met. As indicated, they have to do loading and unloading on site. It cannot be done. No parking would be permitted in the street. They also would need to provide to us a statement from the department, the state of Tennessee, stating that the site has met all the state standards for daycare use, and that we can also require screening along the property lines, which would be required then to block the views of the preschool. So there were some issues that were brought up regarding noise, traffic, safety, and there was also signage, which is a current issue. So noise, there would be new noise from children, but it would not be expected to be at a level that would exceed the city's noise ordinance standards. Traffic would generate new cars for dropping off and picking up children. The city traffic engineer states that the additional 12 vehicle trips would have a minimal traffic impact for this area. And then the safety issue were the interaction with the school bus stops at this intersection. And the school bus schedules on their website show that the elementary bus arrives at 6:45 in the morning, which is before the start of the school, and returns at 2:55 in the afternoon. And the high school and middle school bus arrives at 7:15 to pick up the students and returns at 3:28. So it appears that the preschool would be open after the elementary bus comes in the morning, and then in the afternoon, it appears that the children may be napping or snacking according to the schedule that the applicant had provided. During the site inspection, staff did observe a couple of illegal signs posted on the site, so those illegal signs must be removed and cannot be replaced. If a sign is desired, then up to a 3 square foot maximum attached to the building would be permitted, but otherwise the temporary signs could not occur. So there are findings of fact that were contained in the staff report. If the board has any questions of staff, I'm free to answer any of your questions. This concludes my presentation, and the applicants in the audience as well.
So since this is a rehearing, we will have a public hearing as part of this application also, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Are there any questions from the board members before we open up the public hearing?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. One question I have. If we were to approve this request, this would not be transferable if this property were sold to another party they would have to come and make an application likewise if they were to try to have an in-home daycare. Is that right?
No, that's not correct. It is transferable with the property as long as it doesn't cease for a period of time. For the cessation of use, and I think it's 30 months or 36 months,
30
it would
months under state law.
30 months.
it would go away.
To lose your grandfathering, you stop for 30 months. But in the past, generally, a special use permit does run with the land and attaches to the property. But in the past, the board has limited it to the ownership. Okay. That's somewhat unusual, but I think the board, that's one of the
Conditions?
that's a condition that the board, I believe, has the power to impose.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? If not, we will move forward with opening our public hearing regarding this application. I will just, for individuals who haven't been to a public hearing here before with the BZA or the Planning Commission, we would ask that you would limit your comments to 3 minutes or less, because there's several people here who would like to speak. However, if you are speaking on behalf of an entire neighborhood or group, we will allow you to have a few more minutes with respects to your comments. When you do make your comments, please make them to the commission and the board itself. What questions that are brought up during your comments will be answered at the end of the public hearing. So we will make notes of those questions and then answer those questions to the best of our ability at the public hearing. That being said, we will open the public hearing. Anyone that would like to speak for this application or against this application, please come forward.
My name's Meredith Derry, and I just moved across the street from the potential daycare in January.
And I'm sorry, I appreciate you saying your name, and for everyone else that comes up, if you could state your name and your address.
Okay. My address is 1414 Marymount Drive.
Thank you.
My husband and I just moved into the house across the street. We just bought the house in January, and we would not have bought the house if there was a daycare for up to 12 children across the street. I'm not sure what the statistics show about property value being affected, but as a very recent home buyer, I can tell you that it definitely would have affected us buying the house. We would not have purchased it. We moved to this neighborhood because of how quiet and peaceful it is. Having parents drop off children and pick them up during the day would add extra traffic, extra cars. I'm assuming with 12 children, she would have to hire extra employees, which also adds extra cars on the street and extra people coming and going. Even just all the signs advertising enrollment in the front yard looks very cluttered and junky. It would change the dynamics of the street and neighborhood in a major negative way. As a neighbor who lives across the street, a commercially zoned daycare is something we are strongly against. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. I'm Lynn Alsop. I live at 2425 Laurel Hill Court. I'm down the street. The court dead ends right by the property. I have mixed emotions because I've never come before a committee like this. With the Army, I did, and with the school board, but not before this committee. And also, I have a high regard for Bill. Being an educator, I've known him for many years and the good that he's done for our community. I do have mixed emotions about having a preschool at the end of the street. We have not only the city and county buses, but also a special needs bus that comes by every morning and afternoon for a handicapped boy that lives on the street. There's only like 12 houses on the court, and so we're talking about doubling the amount of traffic in the morning and in the afternoon. I like the idea that you mentioned about having it only for the property owner at the time and not being carried over, because knowing Bill and his family, I know that they do an excellent job with children, and he's done that for many years. But I just don't think it's a good fit for the neighborhood. Appreciate your time and your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Osler. Anyone else would like to speak on this application?
My name is Ken Chastain. I own the property at 1407 Marymont Drive, across Laurel Hill Court from the daycare center. And my major objection is it does change the character of the neighborhood. If you look over there now with the two signs in the front and, the neighbors who are behind them who were the first to speak at the last council meeting on this, finally got tired of it and moved. So it shows you that there is already an impact from this, and adding a whole lot more children to the mix is just going to make it worse. So my request is that this be denied.
Thank you, sir.
My name is Roger Wainick. I live at 1415 Marymont Drive. And my concerns are the same as I had last time, is a safety concern because of the chain link fence between my property and the daycare. We have a dog that's a large dog. He barks a lot. And evidently, there's concern about the dog because they did have animal control visit us about the dog. But Mr. Kennedy has assured me that he's going to put a privacy fence up between us. So if that happens, then that concern will be lessened. But that's my main concern, is just the safety of the dog and the children, and the fact that when the children are out there, the dog's curious, the children might be curious of the dog, and that. But that's about my major concern about it.
Thank you, Mr. Moynihan.
Good afternoon. My name is Lee Kennedy, and I live on Ashlawn, which Marymont has a stop sign that butts up to Ashlawn. So my house is right across the street, so maybe 6 houses from the proposed daycare. And I was here last time, surprised that we're here again. I walk my granddaughter, and even with 6 children, the cars park on the wrong direction for drop-off and pick-up. Even with 6 children, they don't abide by the proper traffic controls. So, it's a hazard right now. I just can't imagine it being another 6 children with the drop-off. One day when I went by, somebody had parked the car on the wrong side of the street. The car was running. The doors were open, and they were picking up their child. So I'm just fearful of how it's going to be handled with 6 additional children. And the fact of the matter is they've already begun construction on the garage without approval, which, I know they have every right to do that, but it's just like last time, they're moving forward thinking that they're going to get approval for this. And I just think that it's not the right place in our neighborhood. We have a quiet neighborhood. All our neighbors are concerned about their property values, and so I recommend a denial of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kennedy. Anyone else would like to speak for or against this application?
I'm Jay Jackson, and I'm the lawyer representing Mr. Kennedy in the lawsuit that we filed. And when we agreed to participate in this process, I wasn't aware we were going to have another public hearing, but that's neither here nor there. But I tried to take a few notes, write some things down that it's okay for me. Okay. Had to check with Mr. Ives here.
Absolutely, it's okay.
Yeah, and took a few notes and write a few things down, and I guess I do a lot of planning law, do a lot of this stuff, mostly with the county, not as much with the city. But, you know, the city, like the county, y'all have a statutory procedure set up. You have an ordinance, which has rules. And when the city grants rights and grants citizens like Mr. Kennedy the opportunity upon which to receive approval for something like a special use permit, you set up standards that have to be complied with and followed. And it's the duty of the city, if those standards are complied with, to issue the permit. I mean, that's just the way it works. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. Your lawyer has told you all this from forever and a day. I know that. I fully understand that. I mention that for no other reason other than a lot of times I go to a lot of public hearings and I hear things and I get a little frustrated. So I wrote some things down. Value, cars, traffic. Well, if you listen to the staff report, the traffic engineer has said there will be minimal, if no, impact on traffic. They've already concluded that. It's one of those buzzwords that citizens like to get up and throw at you guys, hoping that you'll grab it and you'll just deny it. But they didn't give you any specific factual evidence to support any conclusion that traffic will be impacted. Value, another one. That was the first one we've heard. Actually, Mr. Tips, in the original thing, addressed that. Who's an appraiser, and he said in his years he's never seen how a house's value has been impacted by the location of a daycare facility. And the nice lady who stood up, and she means well, I'm sure, but she didn't present this court with any actual evidence that her value is going to be impacted at all. The traffic, change the character. I don't know what that means, change the character of the neighborhood. That is just trite at best. It means nothing. I'm sure it means something to whoever said it, but it really doesn't mean a whole lot. I guess what I want this board to do is I just want you guys to look. We're going to rest on the record that was presented at the original hearing because we feel like based on the staff report, based upon the findings that the staff made, that we complied with what we're required in order to have the permit issued. And so what we ask from you guys is think back to what these people have said and ask yourself, did they give me any evidence that shows that this applicant has not met the requirements in the ordinance?
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Anyone else would like to speak for or against this application that hasn't already spoken? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. So I'll start with some questions that I heard from the comments from the citizens, and then also with respects to some of the comments that Mr. Jackson mentioned. So there was one comment about there's parking on the street with respects to delivery and pickup. I'm taking it we didn't get to drive by this location anyway. So is there going to be a circle drive put in, or is it just the two parking spots that we're requiring with respects to drop off and pick up?
The recommended conditions state, I think they answer that. I had the same question, and I looked over the recommended conditions, and isn't the recommended condition that we would require both?
Yes, it's required for both.
Yeah, my question is, though, neither of those items are in place today. Is that a correct statement?
Correct.
Okay. Is that right, Mr. Kennedy? Go ahead. Come on up to the podium.
Upon getting the permit, we will put a circular drive in with a two-car pad that meets all the requirements.
Okay.
We will also put up the privacy fence. So number one, the dog issue next door, spoke to him in great lengths the other night about it, reassured him, make sure he understood. We don't want an incident with the dog as well. But as soon as the kids go into the driveway to get dropped off, no cars will be on the roadway. And they go right inside, and you won't see the kids at all because they go right to the backyard or stay in the garage, which will be a daycare. And the only time they'll see a kid is when they come out, they go back into their car and leave the circular driveway.
Okay.
So we will take care of that.
All right. If you'll stand there for just a minute.
Yes, sir.
So just as part of the edification of this application, when you say a privacy fence, are we dictating how tall and what material this privacy fence will be, or are we leaving that up to the applicant to decide?
Well, the applicant indicated in the materials that it would be either wood or vinyl solid fencing, so it would not be a chain link.
And what about the height?
That would be, I think he indicated it was 6 feet, but that would
Okay.
be dictated by the building permit. You'd have to get a building permit for
Okay.
it.
And then, Mr. Kennedy, is that a fence just in relation to that one neighbor, or is that the entire backyard?
The entire backyard, we will fence in the.
Okay.
I already got it all quoted out, and if you go forward with the permit, that's one of the first things that'll go up is a privacy fence so that we don't impact the neighborhood at all.
Okay. All right, those are all the questions that I have for you, unless somebody else has questions for Mr. Kennedy. All right. Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. We talked about, and Ms. Rush, you addressed this in your opening comments about the temporary signs. So can we talk a little bit about what they are allowed, and as part of, if they were approved, this variance was approved, or special permit was approved, what they're allowed to have as far as signs?
Of course, the temporary signs that are out there were 2 flag signs basically posted into the grass to advertise that they're operating a daycare there. And those signs are not allowed. You're not allowed to have those temporary signs at all. The only signage that would be permitted is up to 3 square feet, and it has to be attached to the structure.
Okay. Thank you.
And that would apply to any type of home-based business, right? Not just a group home. Because I know we have.
There are different regulations depending on the business, but I think the 3x3 is the maximum that any home business would be allowed.
Okay.
And this is a chicken or the egg question for me. So as Mr. Kennedy commented that as soon as he got the permit, or if in fact he was granted the special use permit, that is when he would put in the circular drive and the parking places. So again, this is a chicken or egg question. Do we say, all right, you get this permit based upon you doing this, or we want to see that done before the permit's issued?
The work would have to be completed before they can start business for
Okay.
that operation. And I wanted to refer to the Section 9 of our zoning code. For daycare centers, family daycare homes, which is the smaller number, or group daycare homes, which is the larger, up to 12 that he's asking for. It does require that all drop-offs be conducted on site. So the parents should not be dropping off at the street at this point.
Okay.
So even without the circular drive, the parents should be pulling into the driveway and loading and unloading and then exiting at that point.
Okay. Mr. Balachandra, could you come up to I got a question or two for you, just so we kind of get it on the record here, if you don't mind. First off, thank you for attending. It's already been addressed in Ms. Rush's comments that didn't feel like that the addition of 6 more individuals would have an impact on or huge impact on the traffic that's coming to and from this house. I'm not familiar with this particular street and the number of bus stops that people are talking about, but I didn't know if maybe a conversation could be had. Are the bus stops right in front of this house, or do you know one way or the other?
I was not updated as far as that information. This is an operational issue.
Yeah.
The buses, where they stop and go. When I evaluated this was just on the global effect of 12 vehicles on this roadway system, has very minimal impact on the roadway. Now, again, I don't want to disagree with some of the other comments or perceptions that the residents may have, but just the number of vehicles on a roadway of that caliber has a minimal impact. The second was about the bus stops and dropping off and parking on the street is an operational issue that happens in every subdivision, in every roadways that we have where buses stop and vehicles being parked. So I get those kind of calls that we will have to review and evaluate on a case-by-case basis if there is an issue. And I was not aware of that issue, that there was an issue.
Thank you. Anybody else have any questions for Mr. Beltran?
No, sir.
Thank you, Chairman.
All right, that's all the questions that I have for staff. Does anyone else have any questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman, I don't really have any other questions, and we've had the benefit of this public hearing today, as well as the one that occurred in September, and all of the comments from the public, which I appreciate their situation and I appreciate their comments. We have a zoning ordinance that allows these types of activities in these types of residential zones. And I don't know where you draw the line to say to a person, you can't do this, or with your property, with respect to this, since we have that ordinance. As the gentleman brought up in September, I heard the comments about the diminution in value, and to clarify, with my experiences, I have not seen studies, I've not seen substantial data to support a diminution in value because of this type of activity in a neighborhood. And no one at this point has brought anything up here or otherwise to provide that type of support for that particular comment. I'm kind of finding it hard to see where, with just this number of children or this number of families particularly that could be using that additionally, it's already in operation at a smaller level. I just don't really grasp how this traffic is going to be such a major factor, with it being in a couple of times a day and not in, evidently from what we understand from bus stops, not even at the same times as bus stop drop-offs and so on are going on. And with respect to the traffic and the number of, homes. So all that being said, I guess I would like to make a motion that we approve this request subject to several conditions that I think the staff has addressed, and just to make for the record that And I don't know whether my motion should can be incorporated just to say the items that staff has recommended. If that's acceptable, I would add one. I can either enumerate them or take them from the record.
I think we'll let Mr. Ives answer the question, but
I think the norm, in my recollection, the norm has been that at some point, not necessarily as part of the motion, but at some point the staff's recommended conditions are recited into the record and then usually adopted by the motion. So whether you want to read them in now or you want one of us to read them in and then...
Well, I don't mind. I mean, I don't mind. I just want to incorporate these 8 items of the staff conditions, recommendations, and add also that this special use permit, as long as I'm not in violation of law, but to say that special use permit not be transferable to another party without that party having to come before this body for approval of a new application. So that would be item 9 to the other 8 conditions. That'd be my motion, Mr. Chairman.
And it's my understanding that that is allowed. I know it has been done, and the research I've done, I believe that that would be a condition that the staff can, that the BZA can add to the grant of a special use permit.
Okay. That's my motion.
We have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
I'd like to say I was not here September 2016, and so I guess I have the benefit of fresh eyes on this matter. As I recall, in previous grantings of child care facilities in residential areas, the number of conditions are not always this big. We've granted child care facilities in neighborhoods with less conditions. I think that these are appropriate conditions, and I think that they lessen the impact that would be on the neighborhood to the point that I feel comfortable that there would not be a substantial or undue adverse effect on the adjacent properties. And as such, I feel comfortable seconding the motion.
We have a motion and a second. Any other comments before we take a vote?
I do want to comment on the effect of that motion. Actually, with the respect to the 9th issue, with what's been presented here today and previously, I've not heard anyone that substantially brought any reasons as to the way that Mr. Kennedy has operated his facilities. Even one of the other neighbors even brought that up. But, we can't ensure that of, say, another party that might come up in the future. And I really feel that's one reason why it's appropriate to add that condition.
Any other comments before we take a vote? Seeing or hearing none, all those in favor of the motion to approve this application, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That application passes, subject to all the staff comments and the condition that Mr. Tips added. Moving on our agenda under new business, we have a variance request, application Z17-016 by Seth Weathersby on behalf of Donald Bruce Revocable Living Trust, requesting 2 variances from the City of Murfreesboro zoning ordinance. Chart 2, number 1 is a variance of 14 feet from the minimum rear setback requirement of 22 feet to allow the structure no closer than 11 feet from the property line. And then number 2, a variance of 10 feet from the minimum side setback requirement of 20 feet to allow the structure no closer than 10 feet from the property line. Property is in multiple family residential RM12 zoning district located at the southwest corner of the intersection of Power Avenue and Smith Street. Ms. Rush, if you would review that application for us, please.
Yes, thank you. The applicant wishes these 2 variances. As you noted, the property is zoned multiple family residential RM-12. The property is triangular shaped, as you can now see on the screen. The widest portion of which contains a 95-foot wide TVA easement. The multiple family structure is proposed would be sited in the most rear portion of the property where it's its most narrow and would extend into the required setbacks. This particular property was granted a variance back in 1997. It was a lesser variance, but due to more recent building design modifications, and I think that affected the orientation of the building slightly, it does require a new request because the variance amount increased. If approved, this variance would supersede the old one. The City of Murfreesboro zoning ordinance requires that no variance be granted unless it can be found that there were practical difficulties that are unusual to the property and were not self-created, that granting a variance would not be detrimental to other property in the vicinity, and that there exist practical difficulties like the property size or shape or topography that are unusual characteristics unique to this site that makes it really difficult to develop. And then again, this is not self-created. So staff believes due to the parcel shape and the existence of the TVA easement that's very wide, that this property does meet those standards. The Board of Zoning Appeals would need to make specific findings of fact for granting or denying each variance. In this case, because there are two variances requested, the board would need to make two separate motions. The applicant, I believe, is in attendance today and can also answer any questions that the board may have. And this concludes my presentation on this item.
Any questions for Ms. Rush from the board? Seeing none, I'll open the public hearing. Anyone that would like to speak for or against this application, please come forward.
Good afternoon, Chairman, members of the board. Rob Mulch, SEC, here today on behalf of Seth Weathersby. Mr. Weathersby is looking to create a veterans-only apartment complex on this property. The property has been sitting vacant for an extremely long period of time. As Ms. Rush admitted to, there was a variance that was already accepted and granted 20 years ago on this property in regards to the setbacks to making an actual buildable envelope just because of the inherent property design and also the TVA easement that runs across the front of the property. So there is that inherent, encumbrance upon which we can actually put a usable structure on the property. So this is really just a question of moving forward with, lessening these setbacks so we can get a structure on there to have these 8 apartment complex units for these for the veterans of our services.
Rob, is the building envelope bigger than what was under the original application when the variance was approved the last time, or what's different now?
I can't say for certain. I don't know what the building looked like 20 years ago in regards to that. So but based on what Ms. Rush and what we've provided to everybody here is that the building envelope is slightly larger than what was before. I can't say to what actual size the building envelope was 20 years ago.
Right.
But it's just really the encumbrance of trying to get an 8-unit apartment size into that pie-shaped space on this lot to actually make it usable for a structure of any size.
It's my understanding that the TVA easement may be larger now than it was 20 years ago. It's one of the gigantic metal power poles has at least two layers of lines running.
If you will come forward and state your name and address. Okay. And your address.
3932 Lake Brook Drive.
All right. Thank you.
I'm the proposed purchaser of the
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Weathersby. Does anybody else have any questions for the applicant while they're up here at this point? Thank you all very much. Anyone else that would like to speak for or against this application, please come forward. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing, and we are ready for any comments. Motion with respect to, it would be the variance request of the 14 feet from the minimum rear setback requirement of 25 feet to allow the structure no closer than 11 feet from the property line.
No further questions. I'll make a motion to approve the first one, the 14-foot variance.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? That motion passes. Our next item is the second portion of this application, a variance of 10 feet from the minimum side setback requirement of 20 feet to allow the structure no closer than 10 feet from the property line. Do we have any comments or questions or a motion?
No further questions. I'll make a motion to approve the 10-foot variance.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of this second item as part of this application, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion passes. Your application's been approved. Thank you. The next item under variance requests, application Z17017 by Eric Lohman, requesting a variance of 32 feet from the City of Murfreesboro zoning ordinance Chart 2 from the minimum front yard setback requirement of 42 feet to allow the structure no closer than 10 feet from the property line fronting Old Lascassas Road. Property is in a highway commercial CH zoning district located at 1510 North Boulevard at the northwest corner of the intersection of North Rutherford Boulevard and Old Lascassas Road. Ms. Rush, if you could review that application for us, please.
Thank you. The applicant, Mr. Lohman, is wishing a variance from the zoning ordinance Chart 2 of 32 feet from the front yard setback requirement of 42 feet to allow the construction of a canopy for an automated car wash to be placed 10 feet from the property line. As noted, the property is zoned highway commercial and is approximately 35,000 square feet in size and is located at the end of Old Lascassas Road at the intersection of North Rutherford Boulevard. The applicant wishes to construct an automated car wash with vacuum canisters and a canopy that would extend into the setback along this particular portion of the property that fronts along the cul-de-sac bulb out. As shown on the aerial, there are other properties in the vicinity of the same size, but they do have through passage into the parking lot or through other streets, whereas in this case it does dead end in the cul-de-sac, meaning you're not going to have that much traffic as a frontage along the property. The applicants indicated that the hardship here is that they have two frontages, which really limits the amount of buildable area for this particular site. The City of Murfreesboro zoning ordinance, as noted before, requires that no variance be granted unless it can be found by the board that there were practical difficulties unusual to the property that are not self-created, and that granting it would not be detrimental to other property in the vicinity, and that there exists difficulties like property size, shape, topography, or other unusual characteristics that are unique that would make it difficult to meet the development standards, and that it's not self-created. In this case, because of the double frontage and the lack of through traffic on that street, it would meet these particular standards. The applicant is in attendance to respond to any questions from the board, and that concludes my presentation, and happy to answer any questions from the board as well.
So basically, they're requesting that we treat that as a side setback.
Yes, ma'am.
It would be the same as if it was a side setback.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm just looking at the site plan. I'm familiar with this location. It looks, unless I'm reading it wrong, is there a back way out of here, or is there only one way in and one way out? What I'm talking about is this right here.
The ingress and egress would be off of the Las Casas portion of the street.
Okay, so
It would
that's
not come off of Rutherford. Correct.
There would not be another curb cut
Right.
off of Rutherford Boulevard.
right.
There's not. Is that a connection to one of
Yeah,
the
that's
other
what
properties?
Yeah, that's what I'm asking. I'm talking about right here.
That connects into the property to the left. Is that correct?
That's the Burger King.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
to the left, and McDonald's to the right.
Yes, you're right. It does go into the parking lot area on the adjacent property.
Okay.
But there are a number of other legally permissible uses that could be put on this property, correct?
Correct.
Without any variances at all. It's just with the nature of what this applicant is proposing, the limitations that it's causing in that particular situation.
It would appear so. I mean, we haven't had other proposals, to my knowledge. Like I said, there are other parcels in this vicinity that have been developed of similar size. So, in theory, there may be something else that could fit.
And this is, if these were just parking lots, though, we wouldn't need a setback. If it's because there's an awning, and that's the reason for the setback request.
Right. It's because there's structure going into the setback.
So
yeah, if it was just parking or driveway, you would not need it.
Okay.
All right, any other questions for staff before we open the public hearing? Seeing none, I'll open the public hearing. Anyone that would like to speak for or against this application, please come forward.
Chairman Halliburton, my name is Clyde Roundtree at Holston Steel Engineering. I'm here representing Mr. Lohman regarding this project, and just a few things I can address for clarification purposes. The site also has a restriction on the other side. As you saw in the aerial, there's kind of a rocky-looking area. There's a pretty substantial drainage feature that's kind of pressing, kind of justifying us towards that old Las Casas cul-de-sac. And also, Mr. Lohman's worked real intently with the city. The city planning staff wanted to have that secondary connection. It's not used for access. It's really a future kind of potential, more like a emergency access if there's ever a need for that. They had to work with tire discounters and try to get that whole coordination done. So that's why it's shown on the site plan, but that's really more of a secondary feature if needed. That was requested by the planning staff. And I think the key to the whole request is that Old Las Casas is a cul-de-sac. So as Mrs. Rush mentioned, that is really treated as a side yard versus a front yard. So the two distinct fronts have really caused us a hardship in terms of trying to create what Mr. Lohman's trying to create. And as been mentioned, the site's been looked at by many developers, and Mr. Lohman's the one who's persevered through this process to try to find something that will work on that particular piece of property. So the city planning staff feels like it's been a good application towards the property. They're excited about the potential of using that particular site. So with that in mind, I'm available for any other questions you may have. I just want to bring some clarification.
Just out of curiosity, is there any egress or ingress from any of those out parcels that are developed into the Kroger parking lot now? I don't think tire discounters.
I'm not sure about that.
Yeah.
There's a Burger King there.
I think it is.
Tire discounters.
So would this connect all the way to tire discounters then?
Well, that secondary connects to that parking lot, but it's not really used as any kind of it's not part of the normal functioning flow of the business.
I'm with you.
No, it's.
Anyone else have questions for the applicant? Thank you, Mr. Roundtree. Anyone else that would like to speak for or against this application? Seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing. Any questions, comments, motions with respects to this application?
There are no comments or questions. I move to approve this variance request.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, Mr. Lohman, that application has been approved. Thank you. Our next application is application Z17-018 by Mr. David Branch, requesting a variance of 4 feet from the City of Murfreesboro zoning ordinance, Chart 2 from the minimum side yard setback requirement of 12.5 feet to allow the structure no closer than 8.5 feet from the side property line. Property is in a single-family residential zone, RS-15, zoning district located at 506 Woodmore Drive. Ms. Rush, if you would review that application for us, please.
Yes, this is a new application for the applicant, Mr. Branch. As noted, he wishes a variance from Chart 2 of the Murfreesboro zoning ordinance from the side yard setback of a requirement of 12.5 feet to be no closer than 8.5 feet from the side property line. The property is zoned RS-15, which is single-family residential. The addition was constructed on the house with a building permit, but the applicant at that time had not surveyed the property line to determine the location of the property line. At a later date, it was surveyed and found that the addition that was constructed was 6.7 feet or 80 inches from the property line, not meeting the setback. The applicant had requested a variance for this encroachment, and the Board of Zoning Appeals considered the information and denied the variance in January 2017's meeting. The applicant submitted a new request to offer to reconstruct the exterior wall inward 42 inches, creating a covered porch on that particular addition. That would allow him to keep the roof structure, which is integral to the whole construction of that building addition, intact, and the exterior wall would then be 38 inches into the setback. So the City of Murfreesboro zoning ordinance allows porches to encroach 42 inches into a setback. However, a porch is a covered entrance into a building, usually having a separate roof is how it's defined. The information that was submitted from the applicant and from the prior variance public hearing minutes, it appears that the addition for this house was used for a walk-in closet, and it's not evident that there would be an entrance into the house through this addition. The applicant states that the hardship is that the parcel is irregular shaped, and when the house was constructed originally, it was not parallel to the property lines, which caused the confusion when they built the addition, which had not been surveyed. So there are some other properties in that vicinity, similar rectangular shaped, not knowing if that is an issue as well. In this case, again, the Murfreesboro zoning ordinance requires that no variance be granted unless there's practical difficulties unusual to the property and not self-created. Granting it would not be detrimental to other property in the vicinity, that there exists practical difficulties like property size, shape, topography, or unusual characteristics unique to the site that make it extraordinarily difficult to develop, and that the situation was not self-created. And the ordinance requires that the Board of Zoning Appeals make specific findings of fact for granting or denying each variance. So this concludes my presentation. The applicant is here to respond to any questions in particular about the entrance. So thank you very much.
With that, are there any questions for staff before we open the public hearing?
I don't have a question, but I did receive a call from Mr. Brock East today regarding this application. I wanted to disclose that. He was speaking on behalf of Mr. Branch, and just to sum up his he gave me a brief overview and just gave spoke to the integrity and willingness to work with the board and his neighbors. It was the sum of what Mr. East was told me, that Mr. Branch was a nice fella and was wanting to take care of a situation that he didn't realize that he was in, and that he was in a difficult position trying to correct this situation. And I just wanted to disclose that I received that information.
Any other questions or comments for staff before we open the public hearing? Seeing none, we'll open the public hearing. Anyone that would like to speak for or against this application, please come forward. Yes, ma'am.
Chairman Halliburton and members of the BZA. I'm Jim Martin. I'm also one of the owners of this property. I preside at 510 Woodmore Drive, which is adjacent to the application that's encroaching on the 12.5-foot property line. I would just, excuse me, I'm still working, and so I was in North Carolina on a business trip. I interrupted that business trip and drove home late last night to be here this morning to speak on behalf of Marcia and I. I'm 100% against you approving this application. Obviously, David, Mr. Branch did not agree with you from last time because it was turned down originally, and nothing has changed, and this is not going to change anything as far as that parcel is concerned. Thank you for hearing me.
Thank you, sir.
My name is Marcia Smith. My address is 510 Woodmore Drive. Jim and I own 510 Woodmore Drive. I did some handouts. I guess the first thing, I'm not real sure why this is even back before the board, because there's nothing has changed with this other than he's asking for 4 feet instead of 7 feet. And that's the only thing I can see that has changed. I highlighted in his letter he submitted with his request, he has put in here that it was difficult to measure due to my home not being set parallel to the property line when it was built in 1962, which was not self-created. I believe that because the house is not parallel to the property line, it may have made it difficult for myself and the City of Murfreesboro codes inspector. Which goes back to, I've also included some minutes from the first meeting and highlighted some, but pretty much y'all's decision during the first meeting was revolved around the fact that Mr. Branch was warned by me 2 times in 2013 that the property line was not where he thought it was. Y'all concurred that, he had every chance to get a survey prior to going ahead with this addition. He chose not to. And this statement he made that because it's an odd-shaped lot and not being set parallel to the property line, it may have made it difficult for him to determine the property line, which to me says another reason. If it was difficult for Mr. Branch to determine the property line, Mr. Branch should have stopped and gotten a licensed survey to determine the property line at that point. I've also included in the handouts that I gave you this was his survey that he turned in last time. He states in the last paragraph, the above information was found during demolition of my home, which means when he started, after the last hearing, when he went home and started to take down, which involved taking down some gutters and about 4 pieces of siding, and I've included a picture of that also, so you can see that he threw the siding in the side yard, and I look at it every day. But if he only figured out when he started to demolish or take down that building, if he only figured it out then that he had an odd-shaped lot and that his house was not parallel, I can't imagine, because here is his survey. Did he never look at his survey? I'm sorry, I'm addressing the wrong question to the wrong people. But it seems apparent to me, I can look at this, I could look at the pictures on the site, the zoning site, the tax site, and see all along that, in fact, his house is not parallel to the street and that he has an odd-shaped property. Again, just to reiterate from the first hearing, I've included the comments from the inspector. On 12/19, the footing failed at 11:50 a.m. He has the notes attached that says from the inspector. Need to locate property pins and place string line high enough to properly measure side setback. Like y'all said in the first, and I've got that highlighted in these comments also, that it is ultimately up to the homeowner to determine where the property line is. And if in his own words in this, that it was difficult to measure due to his home not being set parallel to the property line. That's in his letter with the application. So as far as I'm concerned, there's really nothing has changed. Y'all established during the first hearing that he went off of one pin, and it wasn't actually, because it was up above the ground. It wasn't an original pin anyway. One pin, so I don't know how you would string a line from the back of the property to the front if you were going off of one pin. I don't understand. And he measured, it wasn't the pin, he measured from the other person's property next to him over and then placed a point. So I think it goes back, I could go on, but here's the information. And Mr. Ives did point out during the last meeting that with the city inspectors, there is no guarantee to the accuracy as they rely on the best information given to them. That's on page 12. If that information is wrong, then the fact that an inspector approved it does not give anyone a right to continue. And it says on down further in that, it's highlighted, Mr. Tips, verify with Mr. Branch that within a couple of weeks of commencing, Ms. Smith brought it to your attention and you declined to get a survey. Is that a fair statement? Mr. Branch said, yes, that is a fair statement. So, Mr. Halliburton, Mr. Tips, you both said that it's highlighted on page 13 that if this issue were brought up with y'all where you live, you would have gotten a survey done.
Ms. Smith, I don't want to cut you off, but if you could wrap it up, we'd appreciate it. And
Okay,
yeah.
well, okay, basically, for the first, this all started on August the 15th when we got our survey done. It is now 8 months later. And the only reason anything has happened to this point is because I've had to be in constant contact with Mr. Holt's office and to push the issue. And so nothing has changed with us. We are not in favor of this in any way. This wasn't self-created. This problem wasn't self-created. The property's already been developed. It's not an instance where it was an odd shape and you want to develop the property. He has a huge backyard. He could have put this addition on his backyard. And when it's all said and done, this is a closet. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Smith.
Good afternoon, Chairman, Board, City officials. My name is David Branch. I live at 506 Woodmore Drive. Again, just thank you for your time and your consideration this afternoon. I'm requesting a variance due to the fact that my lot has unusual characteristics. As you can see in the plat, all four sides have different lengths and the front property line is curved. Also, my lot is an odd pie-shaped lot, as you can see there in the plat. Also, due to practical difficulties of my home not being set parallel to the property when it was originally built, made it difficult to for that line with the addition. one corner of the addition is, I'm requesting a 6-inch variance, and because the property line's not parallel, the front corner, I'm requesting a 38-inch variance. It's actually close, 3 feet 2 inches, a little bit closer to that than 4 feet. And I know policy you have to round up. I understand that. I originally pulled this permit in 2013, and the structure was in place for over 2 years before the current homeowner bought their property. And while I was demolishing it, after the last hearing that I lost, as you stated, that's when I found out about that 42-inch side porch. And I'm willing to do a door or no door, whatever the board would like on that, whichever would help me allow the structure to stay. That 38-inch and 6-inch variance will allow the structure to stay. And I've got some pictures if I could show you. I know you've got some, but it's mostly of the roof. Can I hand these to y'all? Is that okay? On the end there, you can see how it is tied directly into the home. And that taking off 38 inches is not going to be a very simple procedure. It'll kind of make, I built the roof to blend in with the original home and to look nice and add value to my house and the neighborhood, as well as the foundation. So if this variance is granted, it will allow that roof and foundation to stay. But making that side porch go in 42 inches, I think will give it a less visually obtrusive for my neighbors to look at, so it'll be more, 42 inches further away from their property. I mean, as you can see there, you can barely see it from the road as is without any adaptions made to it from the bushes and whatnot. Let's see here. I think that's about it for me.
All right.
Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Branch? Thank you, Mr. Branch.
Yes, sir.
Anyone else would like to speak for or against this application?
Good afternoon. My name is Charles Perry. I live at 1203 Houston Drive, which is right next door to the Branch's home. And I just am here to speak in favor of Mr. Branch's integrity. A mistake was made. It was an honest mistake. And I just am here to favor his integrity in this matter. Also, I'd like some clarification on something. I heard something a moment ago from Ms. Rush about a porch and what that did to the variance. And I'm not quite sure I understood that. You said if a porch was put in place, did it change the variance?
No, I don't believe I said that.
Something about 42 inches?
A porch as defined. So again, a porch is a porch, which means you have to have an entrance and it has to be covered with a roof. And I'm not sure that Mr. Branch has shown that in fact would be a porch.
Well, if it were a porch, how would that change the variance rules if it were a porch?
A porch is allowed to have a 42-inch extending into a setback. It's allowed by right in the ordinance. So you wouldn't have to be here, in theory, if it was only going 42 inches into the setback and it was a porch. You wouldn't even have to request a variance.
Well, I guess my question to the board is if Mr. Branch agreed to convert that section to a porch with a door, would that be in violation of the variance rules?
Yeah, because he is further than 42 inches. So he's, I think, 60 inches, I believe. So there would still be the exterior wall over the setback line. And that's why we're here today as a new application.
I see. Well, again, my role here is to reiterate what others have said. It should have been surveyed, no doubt about that, but it wasn't, and here we are. And I'd just like to vouch for Mr. Branch's integrity in this and his willingness to try to make things right. I know he moved a fence to try to show that he was trying to do the right thing, and I believe he would do anything to try to keep his, make everyone happy and try to keep his structure and not have to tear it out. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else that would like to speak for or against this application? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing. Any questions, comments, motions with respect to this application? So I'll make a question or a comment. I was, like the last speaker, I was thinking that we were saying that if this was turned into a porch that he wouldn't even have to be here, but it sounds like if it was turned into a porch that had an entrance, he still would have to ask for a variance. Is that what I heard you say?
Yes, that's correct. It's a lesser variance than the January one that was requested.
Right.
But it still would be necessary. Correct.
Okay.
I would comment, I think, the definition there of yard, which is on page 2 of the staff report, says that bay windows, porches, and balconies projecting not more than 42 inches from an exterior wall are allowed. I believe that presumes and assumes that that exterior wall is within the setback. As I see this drawing, the exterior wall will still be 38 inches into the setback, and then they want another 42 inches that they're going to call a porch. And I don't believe that that's what the zoning ordinance, how the zoning ordinance should be interpreted. I think if his exterior wall was on the property line, then under this definition, he could have a porch or a bay window or a balcony that extended up to 42 inches into the setback. But he's still asking for a, whatever, 38 and 42 total. That's still the variance that he's asking for.
Thank you, Mr. Ives.
I'm just reading your drawing. Okay, please, yeah, please come and.
Yeah, if I reconfigure it, the new exterior wall will be 4 inches within the already existing setback.
At the back, at the rear?
At the front.
Then why do you show 38 inches here?
38 inches will be the porch itself.
That's another 42 inches.
The exterior wall will stay within the setback, but it's that actual uncovered porch with a column and just foundation and roof with no walls that will be into the setback, sir.
I'm a little bit.
I don't believe the drawing shows that. If that's the case, it's not represented here.
There's a 38-inch number in you've put in on the bottom portion of this drawing. It says 42 inches, and there's 2 lines, and then there's a third line that's close to the setback, and there's nothing in that little bitty space between the second line and the third line, but below all of that, there's 38 inches. What does that 38 inches represent?
That would be the porch going past the setback of the home. So it allows for 32 inches, or excuse me, it allows for 42 inches. And if I was granted the variance to leave the roof and the foundation and not demolish the actual structure of the home, the variance would be 38 inches, which would just be porch. So the actual exterior wall would still be within the setback. I apologize if the drawing's misleading.
I have a question. According to the survey that was completed by Johnny Leonard on November the 2nd of 2016, it's showing existing one-story brick residence, apparently 6.7 feet from the property line.
Yes, sir.
So that has been demolished?
No, sir.
So then how do we get, tell me how we get back?
The 42-inch covered side porch can go past that 12 and a half feet, if I'm understanding all this correctly.
But the building itself is beyond the setback.
The exterior wall will not be beyond the setback.
But it's showing that it is now. So tell me how we get there. If it's,
I will tear off 42 inches of my closet and convert it to a side porch.
so what you're saying is you are going to tear this off.
If my variance,
Then only, according to your drawings, 38 inches of the front corner of the porch
yes, sir.
will be beyond this setback.
Yes, sir.
And 6 inches approximately at the rear.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And are you going to have if you were to do this, are you going to have a entrance onto this porch?
I'm fine to have an entrance or not have an entrance. It's up to your discretion. If there is an entrance, I'll make a door to make it a porch. If that will help me get the variance, I'm more than willing to do that.
And what would be, just out of curiosity, what would be the dimensions of this said porch?
The porch would be 42 inches.
Well, I'm talking about, so 42 by...
Oh, it's the full length of the structure, which I believe is...
Oh, okay. I'm with you.
On the side there.
Yeah.
Of course.
Okay.
Or I'm open to any other suggestions. My main kind of objective for this variance was to not have to take that 38 inches off of the picture of the roof that I showed you, that I've tried to, it's the same pitch, it's the same hips as the original home, as well as foundation. I've got HVAC in there, electric, the like. It's a lot of usable space for my family. I know it was stated that it was just a closet, but a lot of those older homes, I've got 3 young sons and stuff like that, so we need the space.
Thank you, Mr. Branch. Any other questions for Mr. Branch? Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, the public hearing's, well, is the public hearing closed? Well, we asked him some specific questions, so. Any other questions for the staff from the board?
Just whether or not, definition of a porch, I understand. But basically, this would be nothing more than whether you put a door or whether you don't put a door. It could, without a door, it could be covered storage, just like a carport, would be covered car storage. Correct? We can...
Yeah, but I would like to just reiterate, you do have to make specific findings of fact in favor or denial. So is it of his own making? You'll have to decide that. Is there anything unusual or unique about the property? So those are the things that we base the variances on.
Mr. Branch, I'm not sure exactly what has changed with respects to this application as to why we denied it the last time. I understand that you are trying to get as close as you can with respects to how the ordinance or the setback requirements read, but I'm not sure what circumstances, based upon Mrs. Rush's just comments, that what's changed between now and when we first heard it. I'm still not really in a position that I can be in favor of the application in and of itself. Any other comments, or does anybody have a motion?
Well, in a sense, I disagree, because this would you know, one of the things that we find is whether it would impair an adequate supply of light and air to the adjacent property, and it does. Not having an exterior wall at that 70-inch mark allows for further light to go. I mean, it does allow for more flow, despite the fact that there's a roof covering it. You would not have as far over as you did previously into that neighboring property. And so I think I disagree with you as far as whether there's been a change. I don't know if, I guess this is a question for Mr. Ives, whether this having a new proposal as to how the property should be reviewed by the applicant, whether this being a new proposal, whether the old proposal should be on our minds, or whether we are holding him to a standard that's appropriate by considering the last, or whether this should be looked at independently.
Well, reality is, I think both. I think that he has attempted to bring additional information, not additional information, different information. There's been a significant change from what was presented at the couple months ago. On the other hand, I don't think we can be in a vacuum and not be aware of how we got to where we are. If this were a proposal for a new construction that was going to extend into something, perhaps you could, because there's been a proposal. Okay, now that proposal's gone. Now we're going to make another proposal. But you know, reality is this is trying to fix something that was done wrong, incorrectly. And does this fix it or not? And certainly it's different from what was proposed before, but there's still the question is, does this meet with the requirements? And you know, the reality is there's still an encroachment of 70 inches, and even though part of it may become a porch and part of it a closet, there's still a 70-inch encroachment.
Just a point of information, if it's torn off, as he said, it's not a 70-inch encroachment anymore, it's a 38-inch encroachment.
Well, the wall encroaches 38 inches and the roof encroaches another 42.
Okay, I didn't understand it that way. I'm sorry.
So that's, I think that's what his drawing on page, I guess it's not a numbered page, this drawing.
Well, with that his drawing with the hash marks actually is coming in 42 inches from where the existing wall is now.
Correct.
It was his statement that he was going to tear that off.
Yes.
And that the porch would extend 38 inches on the front side beyond the property, but beyond the setback, and 6 inches approximately on the rear. That would be the porch overhang.
I don't believe that's the proposal. Not true. The roof line is intended to stay as it is. Is that correct, Mr. Branch? You don't propose to reduce the roof overhang at all, do you?
No, sir. The roof overhang, and I'm sorry, the roof overhang that I'm asking for is 38 inches. So the roof and the foundation will still be, even with the 42-inch side porch that's allowed in the city code, even with that 42 inches, I'm still requesting an additional 38 inches of variance of roof and foundation to stay. so that I don't have to demolish the actual hard structure of the home. Yeah.
I apologize, that was my misunderstanding.
I'm sorry, but these drawings don't coordinate to what he's saying. He's got a drawing that shows an exterior wall 38 inches at the front from setback line.
And now that I look at that, you are correct, sir, in that. And I'm fine to move that wall to where it needs to be, but that 38 inches would still be the roof and foundation. I apologize. So that I can move the wall back further.
So are you saying that 42 inches of this roof will be cut off?
If I am denied today, 38 inches of the roof and foundation will have to be demolished.
Well, if you're denied today, I think more than that has to come off. 70 inches has to come off.
No, because I could still do a porch. I'm just asking for a variance of the 38 inches for the roof and foundation. It would still be an additional into the setback.
But you're asking, the code allows 42 inches from the exterior wall, and that has to assume that
I apologize. That exterior wall is not
correct.
Yes, sir. You're right. This exterior wall in the drawing, now that I look at it, is not per code. I would have to move that exterior wall further back into the variance. But even moving the wall, as far as like the closet to porch ratio, if it's 50-50, 60-40, whatever it might be, I still need 38 inches of roof and foundation variance to not have to tear down the structure. And I'm willing to do whatever the board sees fit as far as closet to porch ratio, whatever I need. Wherever I need to put that exterior wall, I'm more than willing to do, as long as I can keep that 38 inches of roof and foundation. I have to tear into that. And I apologize for my
I believe that at a minimum, if the board is not inclined to deny this outright, I would encourage the board to defer action until we get some drawings that show what's really intended here, both what's on the ground now, what's going to be on the ground and in the air, assuming that he is allowed some relief, because we don't have that today, and I don't think anybody has any idea what this will look like. Or he might. None of us do.
So what are the feelings of the board? Do we have a motion to defer, deny, or approve?
I think we've talked around in circles enough that it may be helpful to have a new drawing, and I would move to defer.
I agree with that because I'm confused right now. And I don't want to turn anything down, until we look at something that's more substantial. So I agree that we just, defer this until we get more information. So I'm seconding. Did you make a motion?
I did.
And I'm seconding.
I thought I did.
You have any comments, Mr.
I just have a question. Assuming what the intent of that motion is that if you're not, your intent's not to deny it on its face, if he can come back with a suitable.
Based on the fact that we've talked about this picture enough to lose our clarification of it, that it would be nice I think it's appropriate to defer and request a new drawing in order to have a better understanding of the intent of this application.
And it would be my opinion that it would be fully up to the board when it sees additional information, then to make the decision it feels appropriate. If it feels appropriate to grant a variance at that time, depending on what's presented, then that would be the motion. And if the board is not convinced that that is the appropriate action, then it would move to deny the variance. But I think that's still an open question. I don't think y'all have enough here in front of you to decide to make a decision based on various data that shows up in these drawings.
Any other questions or comments? We have a motion on the floor. All those unless we have other comments or questions, all those in favor of deferring, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I'm going to vote no against the deferral. But the ayes have it, so the motion has been granted to defer this application. All right, moving on to the next item on our agenda under special use permits, application Z17-019 by Kenneth J. Luce on behalf of St. Mark's Methodist Church, requesting a special use permit for the construction of a columbarium to house niches for cremated remains within 3 enclosures, each measuring 5 feet tall by 6.5 feet diameter. Property is in a single-family residential RS-15 zoning district located at 1267 North Rutherford Boulevard. Ms. Rush, will you review that application for us?
Thank you. The applicant, St. Mark's United Methodist Church, wishes to expand the existing institutional group assembly use, which is in this case a church, to construct the columbarium to house niches for cremated remains within 3 enclosures. If you look at the screen before you, you'll see what the enclosures will look like. They're octagon shaped, and they would be located near the entrance of the church. The Murfreesboro zoning ordinance requires standards for approval of a special use permit, that the use would not have a substantial or undue adverse effect on the adjacent property or character of the neighborhood, that the proposed structure use would be constructed, arranged, and operated to be compatible with the immediate vicinity and not interfere with development and use of adjacent properties, that the proposed building or use would be served adequately by essential public facilities, including streets, parking, drainage, that the proposed building or use would not result in the destruction, loss, or damage of any feature determined by the BZA to be significant, including natural, scenic, or historic importance. And for this particular project, it does appear that it would meet these particular standards. The applicant is here to answer any questions, and I can have questions as well. Thank you very much.
Any questions from Ms. Rush? Seeing none, we will open the public hearing. Anyone that would like to speak for or against this application, please come forward.
Good afternoon. I'm Julie Morrell. I live at 2187 Gold Valley Drive, and I'm directly on the south of the property at the main sanctuary. And I think my only concerns are if this special use is granted, would they continue to build these? Would the structures be able to be expanded to build more? And in the future, would there be any way that they would have a cemetery there, since you all have cremated remains? So I'm just wondering, will this project expand at some point, or will it just be contained to this one-time request?
We'll answer that question at the end of the public hearing. Do you have any other questions or comments?
No, that was
okay.
it.
Thank you. Anyone else that would like to speak for or against this application?
Good afternoon. My name's Kenny Luce. I'm on the board of trustees and was heading up this project. Excuse me, at one time.
Can you repeat your name and your address for us, please?
Yes, Kenneth Luce.
Okay.
3114 Barron Court, 37129.
Thank you. Go ahead. I apologize.
Want me to address some of the concerns she has?
Sure.
Okay. The way the building is sitting, it faces Rutherford Boulevard, but on your side of the building, you will not see, because the building comes out far enough to, if you can see on your drawing, the building comes out far enough to totally block it off. And the other end of the building, the building doesn't come out quite as far, so it's somewhat visible. But to your more important question, that site is big enough for us to put 6 or 8 units, as you saw in that photo. That's why we picked it. It has proximity to parking, some things like that, which benefit the congregation. But it's big enough in anybody's lifetime in here, it will never fill up. So that was why we chose that site. And we looked at other sites, but they did not have this benefit of being sort of enclosed, if you will. One side to Rutherford Boulevard is wide open, but the building, we're pretty much encased it other than that.
Thank you, Mr. Luce. Any questions for Mr. Luce before he?
I'm Cherie Blakemore, and I am a resident at 2169 Gold Valley Drive in the Stratford Place community. If you would, is there any way you can put that map back up? And I just need to visually see where the location is in reference to the residential area. Because the petition, the permit that they're asking for is for this cremation remains enclosures to be in a single-family residential area. One of the reasons why I moved into that area is because it is a very astute community. There is a gated estate right outside of my home at Gold Valley. The church is in my backyard. There is an alleyway that the Homeowners Association owns and maintains. And when I go into my garage or go to my mailbox, I can take one step and I'll be on St. Mark's church yard. So the area as to exactly where this site is in location to the residential area, that's why I'm here. I just need to know exactly where it is because I really don't prefer to see these huge fixtures, 6.5 by 6.5 and 5 feet tall. I'm 5 feet tall, and 6.5 by 6.5 is large. So I think the gentleman said that he could expand even to 8 more structures, a total. Mm-hmm. So I just need to know, is it visually seen by the residential properties on Gold Valley? You can see the little area where the homes are. At the bottom of the little blue line you have there, those are the Gold Valley homes, and then across is where the church is. You have your softball area, and it's full of life. They have more youth than I've ever seen in any church, and I congratulate you on that. Soccer teams and so forth, and it's full of life. And so to actually see something that symbolizes death is something for me to see every day when I walk out of my home. So can you just tell me, is it visually seen from where I live in those residential homes?
I'm sorry. Let us get to answer your question, but we need to get it on the record. So do you have any other questions that you would like either the staff or Mr. Luce to answer before we finish?
No other questions other than, also, would it be like if the 3 containers are approved today, would they have to come before the board again for approval for more containers?
That's a very good question because I was going to ask that myself. So we'll get that answered for you.
Yeah, and I think that's about all as far as the visual effects. Like I said, life and death are totally different, and I really, really am concerned about the property value. As I said, I moved there for that reason. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Well, have a great day.
Okay. Do we have a site plan that tells us exactly, other than this arrow, that tells us exactly where it's going to be? Yeah.
After this.
Okay. Ms. Rush, do we?
I don't know if I could put it on the screen. There was one in the packet that was provided by the applicant, which has the blue arrow on it, and the blue arrow signifies the location where they're proposing to put it, correct?
Mr. Luce, if you could go back to the podium, please.
The church building, putting Rutherford on the bottom of the sheet, is that kind of hash mark thing. And you can see with the white line there, that the arrow crosses. It's in the,
Mr. Luce, I'm sorry. I'm having difficulty hearing you, so I'm sure other people are too. If you could speak into the mic, we would appreciate it.
Does that help?
Yes, sir.
Okay. If you look at where the building is and reference it off Rutherford, which is at the bottom of the photo, or the...
Yes, sir.
Then you see the building is on three sides of that area.
Correct.
So the only thing that's really exposed is looking at the church from the front.
Okay. And will that...
I'm sorry.
Will that be landscaped, since it is going to be facing Rutherford?
Eventually, yes. We're going to put trees or bushes or something, and as well as benches and things that people can use to, if they go here to commemorate someone.
And to answer the lady's question, that would be on the north side of the property, which is opposite from her address on Gold Valley Drive.
Well,
is that correct?
It's Rutherford's kind of on the east side.
Yes.
Kind of, nothing straight. So the little U that it sits in the building, to the right on this drawing is the church. To the left on this drawing is the church, and behind on this drawing is the church. Does that clarify? No. Okay.
To her question, according to your location that you're going to put this columbarium, it will not be visible from Gold Valley Drive because of the church.
No.
That was it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And church extends quite a bit forward of this on Gold Valley Drive.
And
go ahead.
Well, it appears as though you could say there's a north wing, a south wing, an east wing, and a west wing
of the church.
Of the church, because there's 4 parts jutting out. Correct?
Well, in the area we're talking about, yes, but in the area we're talking about, there's no east.
But this area, if let's stay with me, if it would be between the north wing and the east wing.
North and south.
And east.
It sits between. It sits in a U, if you will.
Right.
And the south wing, as you call it, comes out quite a bit, and that's the part that would be closest to Gold Valley. Comes out quite a bit further than the columbarium land would.
So there would be columbarium. I can't say the word.
Well, it took me a long time. So.
On the Rutherford side of the building, on both front grassy areas, there would be both on the north and to the south.
I'm sorry.
Well, you've got the blue arrow pointing on what I would say the north side of the main building. You've got your main building.
I think this is north.
Mr. Tips is going to do a demonstration, I believe.
No, he's got to leave.
No, he's got to go. I apologize. I apologize, Mr. Tips. You have your main, it looks as though your main building goes east to west. That's what I'm going to call that, is the main building. It looks wider than the other portion.
Yes.
And then you have a portion of your building that goes north to south. And on each side of your north to south buildings, there is a annexation that also goes east to west. Is that correct?
I need to see what you.
Okay.
Okay. this was what I would refer to as your main portion of the building. I assume your sanctuary's here? And then this goes east to west, correct? It's a little off kilter.
Yeah, you're right.
And then this would go north to south. And then there's little portions here that would be annexations of sort that would also go east to west, correct?
Yeah, yes.
And the columbariums would be to the north side of the main building only?
Yes.
So it would be within those buildings along with this, it looks like a sidewalk.
Could you go back to the podium, please, Mr. Luce? Thank you.
Sorry, what did you say?
So it's going to be confined, as Ms. King was mentioning, it's going to be confined to that area and would not go any further than where those sidewalks are outlining it. Is that a correct statement?
That's correct.
On the north side of that, of the north half of the building.
Yes.
So we'll show y'all a picture of what because it's hard, believe me, we're having a difficult time with it. So, but we will show you. But it is confined within, almost within the church grounds between the buildings, not where it is towards the house, meaning outside of the building structure of the church itself, if that makes any sense at all. So,
Chairman, since we've lost our quorum for a couple, could we take a couple-minute break? Would that be appropriate?
Yes, that'd be fine.
I hate that, but since I assume Ms. Mosby's going to be back.
She is.
Okay.
She had to
If we could
take care of some business.
break, that,
all right, that'll be fine.
I would ask that.
Okay. We will take a break until we have a quorum back here. Thank you. All right. We will call the meeting back to order, and I think we're going to, TV folks are going to put a picture of the site that's on the overhead onto, thank you very much. So, not to belabor this application, but what you're saying based upon this site, that the columbariums will be restricted and only be placed in that square area between the buildings and the sidewalk. Is that a fair statement?
Yes.
Okay.
Rectangular area, but yes.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. Okay. Are there any other questions? I can't recall whether we're still in the public hearing stage or not.
I think we are. We've kind of gone back and forth with the...
Okay.
But
All
we
right.
haven't closed the public hearing.
Thank you. All right.
But I think based on that, it's clear that this will not be seen from the residential area of Gold Valley.
And Mr. Luce, your intent, even though it's not denoted on the application, is that there will be some sort of landscaping on facing Rutherford Boulevard between these columbariums. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I don't usually do this, ma'am. You said you had one more question.
Yes, I think you said it was still open. Is that right?
Yeah, usually. Go ahead. Just come back up and ask your question.
I just had, well, I think I can see where on that sketch where it's located, but I was just told by the gentleman that there is a commercial entity to this, and they're not doing it for as a gifting to their members. They're selling actual spaces out of these monuments. I don't know at what cost, and that it's being maintained by Woodlawn Funeral Home. Now, my question is this. Is Woodlawn going to have a funeral ceremony every time there is a person who is incremated here? I mean, is there going to be, like, people go to graveside services? I was a licensed funeral director in my time. My family had Blakemore Funeral Home business for years. And so is there going to be actual pomp and ceremony, such as a graveside service for the crematory?
I can't answer that.
But it's a ceremony.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't. We'll try to get that answered.
And I think that's all I have.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Luce.
Okay. Excuse me. 2 points I think she brought up. She made it sound like a profit organization. That's not really true. We will not build it until we collect enough money. People will pay for interment in that columbarium, but we will not build one until we have collected enough money to build the first unit, and then we will not build another one until we've collected. So the money kind of comes in and goes out, if you will. I don't know how it will work out at the end of the day, but anyway, I want to clarify that. Now, with regard to ceremonies, yes, there could be, as part of this service would be going out to the columbarium if there's someone passes.
Okay.
A lot of it would be held in the church, but some of it would migrate outside.
Right. Okay.
And then this thing is available for people to come back and family reunions, maybe gather around a loved one.
But back to her question too, I'm assuming the church is going to maintain all of this. They would maintain the landscaping. They would maintain the columbariums themselves, that sort of thing.
Right.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Luce? All right. Thank you very much. Any other one that hasn't spoken already have any other questions or comments regarding this application? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. I only have one question, not to belabor this. Are we just approving the site itself, or are we approving the site itself and the number of quote-unquote structures that are within this site? Ms. Rush.
It was advertised for up to 3 columbarium structures as described. So if they wanted to open it up and have more, At this point, it would require a new application to define, you have to kind of bookend, you have to say what it is that you're asking for.
Right.
And that would be required, is that would have to have a new hearing.
Mr. Luce, I can't see you, but I just want to make sure you were clear on that, okay? All right, any other questions if no questions, do we have a motion or other discussion on this matter?
If no further questions, I'll make a motion to approve the Columbarium area.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion passes. Okay. Moving on to special use permits. We have application Z17020 by Tony Liebrick on behalf of the County of Rutherford and Siegel High School, requesting a special use permit to construct a softball batting facility measuring 50 feet by 100 feet. It will be a metal pole barn adjacent to the ball fields in accordance with the City of Murfreesboro zoning ordinance, Chart 1. Property is in a single-family residential zone, RS-15, located at 355 West Thompson Lane. Ms. Rush, if you could review that for us, please.
Yes, the applicant, Tony Liebrick, who is representing the County of Rutherford, is wishing to construct an indoor softball hitting facility in the vicinity of the athletic structures that are on that property. This would be a metal pole barn measuring 50 feet by 100 feet and designed to match the baseball hitting facility, which is located less than 150 feet away. In the proposed location, the existing structures pretty much hide the new proposed structure from views along Thompson Lane. The applicant has submitted some photos identifying where the structure would be located, and it looks like it's adjacent to the long jump and the baseball hitting facility. If I may pass this to the board members.
Is this what you gave us, Clyde? Okay.
Oh, so everybody
She gave
has
us all one. Mhm.
So the Murfreesboro zoning ordinance, section 2, defines that this would be an assembly use, which is an allowed use in the RS-15 zoning district. So this is a modification of the existing school use and is subject to review and approval of a special use permit. I have no further comments to provide. The applicant and its representative is here if you have any questions of them. Thank you.
Any question for staff before we open the public hearing? If none, open the public hearing. Anyone would like to speak for or against this application? Mr. Roundtree.
Mr. Halliburton, Chairman, my name is Clyde Roundtree, Huddleston Steel Engineering. I just wanted to let you know that Mr. Liebrick brought this in because the original application had the building in a little bit different location, and we're going to be submitting a site plan if this is approved rapidly, so we want to make sure that there's no communication breakdown there. So it's going to be parallel to the existing batting facility for baseball. Originally, it was a little bit more catty corner to the softball field, so just want to bring that level of clarification to you.
Thank you.
And in the back, there's a little floor plan as well for the facility. So this is going to house one of the coaches, the girls softball coach, as well as the girls locker room. So that's a real nice asset to the school.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Roundtree. Anyone else like to speak for or against this application? Seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing. Any questions, comments, or motions?
If there are no comments or questions, I move to approve this application.
I second the motion.
We have a motion and a second to approve. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to the next item, application Z17021 by Brenda Harrell, representing Journey Point Church, requesting a special use permit for a preschool to operate within the existing church building for up to 50 children, operate 4 days of the week between the hours of 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. in accordance with the City of Murfreesboro's zoning ordinance, Chart 1. Property is in a residential single-family RS-15 zoning district located at 1267 Middle Tennessee Boulevard. Ms. Rush, if you could review that application for us, please.
Thank you. Our applicant, Ms. Harrell, is representing the Journey Point Church, and they're wishing to expand the existing group assembly use, which is the church, to operate the preschool within the existing facilities. The property is zoned RS15, and it would be for 30 to 50 children, and they would operate 4 days of the week between the hours of 8 a.m. to 3 p.m., and the drop-off and pickup location would be the main entrance located between the two buildings. Existing parking on site is 103 stalls. There would be no additional parking needed with this associated use. The church currently operates a Parent Stay Out program, which is just 2 days a week with fewer hours during those days, 8 to 2, and for only 25 children. So this is an existing use, so to speak, and would be an expansion of what's already occurring out there. The applicant would have to get state licensing from the state of Tennessee in order to operate this use, and she would make that application. I will conclude my comments and happy to answer any questions of the board.
Any questions? Seeing none, we will open the public hearing. Anyone that would like to speak for or against this application, if you could come forward. No one wants to? Oh, okay. All right. That being said, we will close the public hearing. Any questions from the board? Motions? Or motions?
If there's no comments or questions, I move to approve this application.
A second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? That application passes. Thank you very much. The next application is our friend, Mr. Lloyd. Application Z17-022 by Jake Lloyd of Mid-America Distributor, doing business as Fireworks Supermarket. Property owner Alex Decernos requesting a special use permit to allow operation of a temporary outdoor vending establishment, season fireworks sales in accordance with the City of Murfreesboro zoning ordinance, Section 9D2. Quadruple E. Property is in the Highway Commercial Highway Zoning District, located at 2962 South Rutherford Boulevard. Ms. Rush, if you could review that application, please.
Yes, the applicant, Mr. Lloyd, represents Mid-America Distributors, is wishing to operate a temporary fireworks tent for the 4th of July season. It would be from June 28th to July 5th. It would operate between the hours of 8 o'clock in the morning to 10 o'clock p.m., except for July 3rd and 4th, where it would be extended from 7 o'clock in the morning until midnight. The applicant is proposing it for the property on South Rutherford Boulevard, 2962, which is zoned highway commercial, and the tent would be located on the easterly portion of the property where there is sufficient parking, and they do comply with all the standards and requirements of our zoning ordinance. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Rush. Any questions for Ms. Rush? Seeing none, we will open the public hearing. Anyone that would like to speak for or against this application? Mr. Lloyd, any comments? All right. I think you're it. So seeing no other ones, we'll close the public hearing. Any questions, comments, or motions?
Do we still have all those conditions we used to have to approve, or do we not do that anymore?
I believe that we have incorporated all of those conditions into the zoning ordinance itself.
Oh, great.
So that we don't have to read through them all each time. If we have something special, we will have that added. But what used to be the standard conditions for fireworks are now
part of the ordinance.
Part of the ordinance. Part of was that triple E, quadruple E.
Stay away from restaurants serving alcohol and gas stations and.
Yes, we've already, in order to even come to the hearing, they have to be able to meet those standards, otherwise there's no point to the application. So yeah, they have to stay within a certain distance of the fire hydrant, away from a fuel source, so many feet away from any on-site consumption of alcohol. They are providing a porta potty. Our applicant was very kind to address all of those in his correspondence, and staff conducted the site visit and confirmed that those were accurate.
Great, thank you.
With that, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, that application's been approved. Our next application, Z17023 by Mr. Lloyd of Mid-America Distributor, doing business as Fireworks Supermarket. Property owner is Mr. Chris Kirby, requesting a special use permit to allow operation of a temporary outdoor vending establishment, seasonal fireworks sales in accordance with the City of Murfreesboro zoning ordinance, Section 9D2, quadruple E. Property is the highway commercial. Property is in the highway commercial CH zoning district located at 1510 South Church Street. Ms. Rush.
Yes, thank you. The applicant, Mr. Lloyd, wishes to operate a fireworks tent temporary facility for the 4th of July season. Same dates, June 28th through July 5th. This would be located at 1510 South Church Street, which is also zoned highway commercial. So the zoning ordinance does list fireworks as a seasonal retailer as an allowed use with a special use permit in the CH district. We are here at a public hearing because these, this particular site and the prior one are new sites for the city and have not been reviewed or approved in the past. Our applicant has gone through and provided correspondence attesting that it does comply with all the city standards for this particular site. The site location they provided was two options, Site 1 or Site 2, and it was going to be determined at a later date between the applicant and the property owner which would work better. So the applicant may be able to confirm which site has been selected at this point. The applicant does intend to provide portable restrooms on site for the customers, and if there's any further questions, I'm happy to respond to those as well.
Any questions for Ms. Rush? Seeing none, I will open the public hearing. Anyone would like to speak for or against? Mr. Lloyd? Okay.
First of all, were y'all trying to get rid of me? I thought you were. I didn't think I was going to get it. One of these I've been trying for 2 years now, and the other one just kind of fell in my lap. Got to replace some of the locations that we're going to lose with gravel being out next year. So, but anyways, we're going to go with Site 2. I don't know if y'all want to take a look at this. I only have one. But if you look at that hash line, you can see the arrows pointing to the power lines or the electrical line. It's a TVA. Mm-hmm. And there is a 75-foot setback. I looked it up. And
you might want to speak into the...
There's a 75-foot setback. And so as much as we would like to be on the other side, we're going to have to go with Site 2 to be out of their, it's not setback, what's the word I'm looking for?
Easement.
Their easement.
Easement,
Right.
Thank you.
Mr.
To
Lloyd,
be out of their easement in legal, I can get it from you in a minute.
since we have our handy dandy projector out
Oh, yeah.
for the use of the viewers at home, I know we have so many. If our television friends can put that up
Should be
for
an on switch right there.
Oh,
There you go.
Mr. Lloyd knows all about coming before the BZA.
Veteran.
That might.
The wheel up on top is the focus. If you, in case you need it, I don't know.
He said he needed just a minute to get it up.
There you go. Zoom out.
You might slide the picture just a little bit to.
Oh, that's just Zoom.
I think we get it. Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead, Mr. Lloyd.
Good. That's good.
It's good.
Looks great.
Okay, so anyways, if you right here, there's the TVA lines, and then if you look at the arrow, that's 75 feet. And so we have to be basically anywhere on this side right here of that easement line. And so that is why we're going to have to go with Site 2. There are also a number of cars on the lot because they sell cars. And the property owner has absolutely assured us, because we told him we can't sell there whether y'all let us or not. We can't sell. There's no point in us selling there if we have no parking for our customers. And so he has guaranteed us that he will move all of the cars to one side of the lot, giving us the other side.
Is there enough room for between Site 2 and the building? Are cars going to be going in between the tent? Or is that?
Oh, that's much better. That's a good question. I haven't measured that exactly.
Yeah.
But I would think that there would be adequate room for them to go between there and the building. Of course, whether y'all require it or not, we'll probably put something over the stakes, so no car, like some orange cones or something like that, so that people will see them and not hit them. We could certainly do something else if y'all have something else in mind.
I mean, just by the visual of it, doesn't look like that it would be a very good idea for cars to be passing between that building and
Yes, sir.
Site 2, especially if two cars tried to pass at the same time.
We could block it off. I mean, I don't foresee that being a problem.
Okay.
You'd still have enough parking just in that front portion of the building? Or in front?
It's actually, we're going to have this whole corner back here.
Okay.
And then in addition to whatever we have in the front, I guess if people pull in and park right here.
So there's access to that from the front and the back?
Yes. There is a portion of the lot in the back that opens to the back street as well. I mean, the only other thing, and this is off the cuff, but the only other thing that would be great is if y'all would grant me a variance to come a little bit closer on this 42 feet, allowing even more in the back. But I'm not expecting you to do that. I'm just figured I'd throw it out there. I'm not going to push my luck. But yeah, site 1 just is, non-existent. So.
All right. Any other questions for Mr. Lloyd? All right. Thank you, Mr. Lloyd.
You want me to leave it on?
Sure.
Okay.
Do we have a motion, comments?
Did we close?
No, we didn't. We will close the public hearing. Any motion or comments with respects to this application?
Mr. Lloyd always does a great job at making sure everything's in order. And with that, I will make a motion to approve it.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Seeing none, this application's been approved. Mr. Lloyd, Ms. Rush, any other staff reports or other business?
No, sir.
I have nothing.
Thank you. With that, we are adjourned.